it's been so wet here still raining. And so just the normal natural cycle of things getting too dry for the bugs to show up is just not happening. And so it's it's pretty weird. Like we're still like we're early June now. The weather forecast is calling for 10 more days of rain.
Oh, geez.
We've had just nonstop cool weather and rain. Some like winter storms, like our winter storms. It's crazy how, like, not like snow, but cool temperatures, pouring rain, wind, all of that. Yeah.
That is no good.
No, we get like one every 3 years or so. We used to anyway. We call it January. But but like this time last year we had that heat dome that gave us 40 degrees Celsius. So
that's I don't know which is worse.
Rain or heat. No, the heat dome was awful. It was a killer. Like a lot of our trees died. You could see like dead portions on tons of cedar trees. It was a lot of the plants that we planted here all died. So it was a really rough summertime for sure.
Yeah, we're having that normal spring that is alternating between thunderstorms, generally gross and sticky, and then these crystal clear windy days. And I got so lucky with the Tau Hercules that it was one of those crystal clear, super windy days. And
did you see anything?
Yeah. So I mean, it was frustrating because I have never seen lightning bugs this high up or this fast. We were camping beside Rend Lake at a state park here in Southern Illinois, and there were these lightning bugs that were zipping along so fast that they would trigger persistence of vision. So you'd see a streak, and then you had to wait to see if like it became a dashed line to figure out if you were seeing a lightning bug or a meteor.
I heard a lot of people saying that. I also heard that a lot of people, although the number of meteors obviously wasn't this full-on storm, a lot of people saw fireballs, like surprisingly large number of fireballs. Did you see any fireballs?
Yeah, we saw two. It was, we didn't have 100% of the sky. We had basically 45 degrees up from the horizon all around us. So we had straight overhead. Early in the evening, we saw a density of satellites that surpassed the average density of meteorites, but like peak meteor and peak satellite were about the same numbers of 1 to 3 per 5 minutes. It was surreal because I haven't been camping since before Starlink started in early 2019, and there is a noticeably different sky.
But you shouldn't be able to see Starlink, so it's just regular satellites, low Earth orbit satellites.
Well, whatever satellites it is, there is a noticeable increase in the number of satellites that were visible.
So at your latitude, you probably get, early evening, and where I am, we'll get them all night.
Yeah,
because because we're so far north, the sun will peek over the top of the planet, and so anything that's up there will be observable. And so you can go out at here it now gets dark around 11 o'clock, and you can go out at 12 or 1 and see satellites going overhead. We can see 3 passes of the International Space Station.
Wow!
In 90 minutes apart, so you see it in one location, and full passes, like from horizon to horizon when it's in a certain configuration, and we're in the summertime, and it's sort of right at the middle of summer. Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
One of the cool things about it was I was with a couple of people who had never gone out stargazing before. And so for them, seeing satellites was like new and exciting and a first. And early in the evening, you could see them do the entire track across the sky. And as it got later and later, they would fade out as they went across the sky. And I got to explain, well, that's the sun's shadow making it further and further across the sky. And you're seeing the satellites pass into the shadow. And then we stayed up late enough that we actually saw them start to come back.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really cool. I've never seen, it's never occurred to me, but yeah.
So that was the sign of, we might want to think about at least migrating towards where we're planning to sleep.
Right.
And
it's bedtime.
It was super cool.
Yeah, that's really neat. But it's funny, like how was the dark skies? How was the Milky Way? How was all of that for you?
So where we were, I could make out down to about 5th magnitude. And
that's good.
The Milky Way wasn't as bright as the occasional clouds, but it was bright enough that you could make it out. You could make out the shadow bands in it. Not shadow bands, that's a solar eclipse effect. You could make out the dust bands.
Dust. Yeah.
Yeah. And so getting to explain that to the folks that I was with, because they were like, what's that weird thing? And I was like, okay, let me teach you about the summer triangle. And we just happened to have, with our camping site the way it was, one direction was out over a lake, and the other direction, which was pretty much straight south, was back towards the main campground. And each of the zodiacal constellations kept centering themselves directly in the gap over the road. So I was able to do okay, come look at this. Do you see the question mark? That's Scorpio. Do you see the teapot? That's Sagittarius.
That's great.
And so it's just like the sky and the trees combined to make finding constellations easy.
That's really cool. It's funny because I use people's anger about seeing more satellites as a jumping off point to rant about just overall light pollution. You know, I always say, like, if you're annoyed by seeing satellites, you should be enraged by the light pollution that's happened, how the night sky has been taken away from a third of humanity.
Yeah.
They just can't see, they can't see the sky anymore because of light pollution. And it's bonkers. And you can have towns like Tucson which take it seriously, and you can be in a fairly well populated town and still be able to see the night sky, and it's so stupid. And so anyway,
the thing that always gets me is when I first moved to Austin, Texas, they didn't have the football stadium lights on regularly. And when I took my students out onto the roof to do observing labs, you could just make out the Ring Nebula next to Vega with a pair of binoculars. And it was definitely an averted vision thing, but you could see it. And by the time I left Austin, the city had grown so much that even with the stadium lights off, it was gone. And that's now my summertime test of how are the skies here, and I couldn't find it. And so that made me sad, is it's the color that the light pollution is in that area, apparently. So it's just lost.
Yeah, it's so enraging. All right, we should do our job.
What is today's episode number?
645.
Thank you. 5 more episodes this season.
Is that right?
Yep. Our last episode of the season is 650, and we probably want to move it a couple of days so it comes out right after the JWST announcement.
Sure.
Because it's basically the episode where we check in and see, of the things that we talked about that were supposed to happen this year, what actually happened.
Well, and you will finally acknowledge its existence. It's going to be a very exciting moment for a lot of our fans.
It's true.
Yeah, so I think that'll be good.
All right. So
tell me when you're ready.
I'm pressing OK. I'm pressing that record button. I'm pressing that record button. I'm pressing it again. It's actually recording this time. All right.
I'm recording.
I am too.
Okay. All right, here we go then.
All right.
Astronomy Cast. You done? I'll wait.
I'm done.
Okay. Astronomy Cast, episode 645, The Future of the International Space Station. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and I've been a space and astronomy journalist for over 20 years. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Good. Very good. So, how did your Tau Herculids experience go?
I got to see them. It was complicated by lightning bugs that created sheer chaos because it was sometimes hard to figure out, was that a meteor or a lightning bug? But we saw them, and at peak we were seeing 1 to 3 per 5 minutes, which is pretty good. They were a lot fainter than the Leonids back in 1998, and that made me sad. But I went camping at a dark site, and I have no regrets. And somewhere in southern Illinois is a raccoon that stole an entire bratwurst.
Well done. Good on you, raccoon. We were clouded and rained out, so no luck. But a few sucker holes we tried, but it also was dark. It gets very late here in the summer now, like not until almost 11 o'clock. And so there was like a tiny little gaps in the cloud, but we couldn't really see anything. And we were like, and I wasn't seeing people freaking out on Twitter about it being a full-on storm. So we called it, but hopefully the Perseids will better entertain us.
There's sadly too much moon.
Oh, is it a bad moon year? Oh, well,
yeah, it's
all right.
Bad moon year. I may still go camping.
Speaking of things that you can see in the sky, the International Space Station has been continuously inhabited for over 20 years now, serving as a peaceful collaboration between spacefaring nations. But it's a machine, and it's getting old. In addition, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has made things complicated. What is the future for the ISS? And we'll talk about that in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Okay, well, so let's just start about the sort of the history, a little bit of the history of the International Space Station. How did we get where we are today?
We're going to wait for my dog to stop barking. I'm so sorry, everyone. Editing will occur. The dog will be removed in post. Such strong opinions. At some point, I will train everyone in this house to not order Amazon deliveries on Mondays. I have so far not succeeded. So many thoughts. He has so many
My dog
thoughts.
can't hear any of that happen.
See, the problem is he lays on the sofa looking out the window, and his primary source of excitement is the delivery dudes.
Is it over?
It seems to be over.
How do we get here?
Well, it all started as, in many ways, a peacekeeping idea. Back in the 1980s, America had plans to build the space station Freedom, which was going to be bigger, larger, more complex, more expensive than anything we had ever done. And as Congress began looking at the bills that would raise and looked at the falling of the Iron Curtain in 1991 and the coup of the Soviet Union as it turned into Russia in late 1991, well, it seemed to make sense to basically keep all of those cosmonauts employed in the name of peace and join forces with this new nation that hopefully would allow for better international relations, along with along with the United States and Russia. The International Space Station is also should have locked him somewhere where he can't see out the front window. He normally doesn't do this to us. I'm going to message my husband and see if he can go move the dog.
Yeah, she's barking at cars.
Well, sometimes we get wild turkeys or deer in the front yard. All right, trying again. I am so sorry, Richard and Allie. You're definitely going to be earning your keep this week. All right, trying that entire statement again. The International Space Station is more than just a collaboration between Russia and America. It is also done in collaboration with the Canadian Space Agency, as well as JAXA, and of course the European Space Agency. And between these 5 partners, we have not only built the largest thing to ever be created in lower Earth orbit, but have also begun to do some pretty exciting science in recent years and have created a platform for commercial endeavors ranging from the creation of movies to, well, Bigelow testing out one of their inflatable habitats that may one day go into a commercial space station.
So you've got all of this collaboration, and in more recent times, we're seeing more of an acknowledgement and an integration of, I guess, commercial elements.
Yes.
We saw the Axiom Space, the first 4 space tourists. Axiom Space is going to be building their own module to attach to the space station. So what role is this playing in the future of the station?
It's going to be interesting. So commercial space is new, but space tourism isn't. It's kind of been around as long as the International Space Station has been around. If you have enough money and you pay it to the Russians, they will happily fly you to outer space. What is new right now is there are commercial space companies here in the United States that are willing to also launch you. NASA was never willing to take that risk. And we're at this point where as early as mid-2021, there were hints coming out of Roscosmos that Russia was going to end its part of the International Space Station agreement in 2024. NASA, the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency, and JAXA all have expressed interest in keeping it going until 2028 or preferably 2030. Russia has half the space station right now, and if they go away, a half the space station sized partner is going to be required. And well, when Rogozin threatened the life of the space station at the beginning of the Russian Kyle went downstairs to get Eddie. And now Stella is barking at Kyle, trying to get him to throw a ball. That is the throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball bark. It's a very distinct ball.
I see we just run this episode uncut. Then people can see the chaos that is your life.
It's not always this bad. Really. It's sometimes worse. All right. Okay. So as early as 2021, we saw hints coming out of Roscosmos that the I don't know what is going on. All right. All right. I think it's quieting down. All right. So as early as 2021, we had hints from Roscosmos that they were considering departing the International Space Station in 2024 when the current treaty ends. At the same time, other partners, including the everyone, European Space Agency, Canadian Space Agency, JAXA, NASA, ESA, they all would like to see the International Space Station continue on until at least 2028 and preferably 2030. To make that happen, we have to find a way to fill the vacuum that hopefully won't be literally made by the departure of Russia from the collaboration. And what makes this interesting is Rogozin, the director of Roscosmos, made the threat early in the Russian-Ukrainian war that they would just drop the International Space Station on the world, and who would save the International Space Station? And Elon Musk was very, very quick to say SpaceX.
Yeah,
now,
we'll do it.
Yeah, and what this points to is a recognition that we don't want to allow a gap in our capacity to have humans in space. That kind of a gap is very hard to re-overcome, as we experienced in the gap between the Space Shuttle and Crew Dragon finally being certified. At the same time, you have commercial purpose now being shown for things like the International Space Station, with the Axiom mission, with the movie that was getting filmed there, with all these, well, not necessarily scientific purposes that are getting held. If they find a way to do it, then we could have a space station that goes on to 2030. The catch is that Russia has said that they would really like to develop either a national space station or a space station in collaboration with China, and they have literally threatened to take their toys and go home, by which I mean disattaching their modules from the space station and flying off with them.
Right.
And the CESDA module is the one that's used to keep the ISS in orbit.
All right, we're going to talk about this some more, but it's time for another break. All right, before the break, we were talking about the threats made by Rogozin for the future of the ISS. And he shared on Twitter this just insane video of the cosmonauts celebrating and then disconnecting their portion of the station, and then it just flying free to orbit the Earth on its own. Is that realistic? Could they detach and have a functioning space station?
It's unclear, and the reason it's unclear is the Soviet models, Russian modules, some of them are quite old, they're starting to show signs of their age. There have been recent cracks that had to be repaired, air leaks, and disattaching removing something from the International Space Station is not the most gentle of processes. So in theory, sure, they could do a whole lot of spacewalking and a whole lot of turning of wrenches, essentially, and disattach. But the question is, would what they have be able to survive the stress of the removal? Would they be able to launch new solar panels that would be able to provide the kinds of power they need? And that's a whole lot of ifs. It's kind of like saying, let's go take this engine out of an antique car and try and build a new car around this ancient engine, instead of, well, starting with a new engine and an old shell.
And at a time when Russia is experiencing all kinds of embargoes on their high-tech gear, they're going to need to be able to launch rockets. They're going to be able to get parts, as you say, for solar panels, things like that. We know that their carbon dioxide scrubbers are problematic. They've been having problems with their toilets. So, and then that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, every single piece of machinery inside that station is undergoing wear and tear. We saw what happened with Mir. In the end of its life, that space station although it was doing some great science, was being held together with duct tape and baling wire. And
Yeah.
they've made the final decision that it's time to dunk that station into the ocean.
Right.
And the age of their portion of the International Space Station is roughly the same age as Mir was when they decided it was time to end its life. So I wonder, and I'm sure somewhere people at NASA are seriously looking at it from their perspective. What if? And as you said, you've got this Zvezda module that has propellants on board to help do station keeping, but also it's the Progress spacecraft that dock with the module that really provide the large amount of the station keeping. So does NASA have plans for doing station keeping if they can't have the thrusters and the Russian spacecraft to supply it?
This is a bit problematic. Some of the capsules that we've flown on Atlas rockets have the ability to do station keeping. The problem is the rockets were relying on a combination of parts made in Russia and Ukraine, none of which we can get right now.
Right. Okay, so hold on. Right, the Starliner is the Boeing spacecraft, and this was recently tested, and it was able to dock with the space station. And this is the redundancy for the United States to be able to launch astronauts. You got SpaceX and you got the Starliner, and the Starliner does have that boost capability, while the Crew Dragon doesn't.
Correct.
But it's launching on on an Atlas rocket with Russian engines.
Yeah.
But right.
So that's slightly problematic. Now, the one limiting factor on the SpaceX Dragon capsules not being able to be used for lift is simply that their engines don't have the maneuverability that is needed. And this is the kind of thing that can be fixed. And one of the questions that's being asked is it faster to start figuring out how to reconfigure some of the US capsules to fly on, a Raptor, or not a Raptor, on a Falcon, or is it faster to reconfigure the Dragon capsules to have the maneuverability of their engines that's needed? And I think in the next year or so, we're probably going to be seeing some interesting awards being made to try and sort out that question. Now, the other side of this starts to become, what are we dealing with in terms of sunk cost fallacy? We are spending a whole lot of money to try and maintain something that is beyond its life expectancy, that is likened to living in a boys' locker room. And parts are falling apart. It is finally just starting to do amazing science with things like the nicer instrument that's on board and stuff like that. But at the same time, is it better to keep struggling to keep the same technology going? Or do we take and use it to rapid fire prototype things like the Bigelow inflatable module, the Axiom technologies, and recognize that Russia doesn't have to go it alone and is making googly eyes at that Chinese space station, and China and Russia are still very close collaborators on a variety of different things. And it is not impossible to imagine that Russia departs the International Space Station in 2024 in such a way that we lose the International Space Station. And we right now are at that terrible point of not knowing what's going to happen. So what future do you prepare for? No ISS in 2024, so rapid fire prototyping needed. ISS that has to be boosted by US technology, in which case a different form of rapid prototyping is needed. What do? We don't know.
All right, we're going to talk about this some more, but it's time for another break. All right, so let's explore some timelines then, because you threw it's a mess.
Yeah.
I think is the simple way to describe this. So let's do the best possible timeline.
Mm-hmm.
What would in your mind would be the best possible version of the future of the International Space Station?
The best possible version of the future is all of the modules currently there are allowed to stay put. Stay put. There may need to be change of ownership, but they stay put, and we keep the International Space Station going until 2030, when hopefully the Deep Space Gateway is put in place and we start to see commercial endeavors in low Earth orbit. That timeline is one that I think is extraordinarily tight.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
scarily tight, but
Right, but we've got the International Space Station until 2030. We've got the Lunar Gateway coming online, so we've got this platform that's close to the moon. You've got commercial space stations, plural maybe, that have been launched, which NASA can then just buy storage space, timeshares, use those for the scientific experiments, and so in theory dramatically decrease their budget for doing the kinds of experiments that they want to do, but still be able to fill out the science that they were doing, that they were planning. The space station, I guess, after 2030, what would happen to the station then?
Well, it's going to be crashed into the Pacific Ocean, as all good large mass space objects are. That was always its end game. It can't be boosted into a stable orbit. Folks talk periodically about, let's boost Hubble up into a parking orbit so that it can essentially be a museum item in space. ISS, there is no possible way of that happening. It's going to get dropped through the atmosphere. It is going to disintegrate in a most amazing fireball. And some chunks will probably hit the ocean and hopefully not hit Australia.
Right. Yeah, they'll fire the rockets to bring it down into the spaceship graveyard in the Pacific Ocean. Just what happened with Mir and lots of other stations. Parts of the station can be detached, like the Axiom space, when they do their module, that could be detached with some of the newer modules of the station as well. So there'll still be some portion. There will still be a space station, just not the same size and shape up there. Okay, well that sounds fine in that. Well, I mean, like it sounds heartbreaking to say goodbye to the International Space Station, and your instinct is, but what about the science? But then as I said, like, there will be new places. There will be places to do the science, so don't worry. And then NASA can focus on the stuff that we want NASA to focus on, exploring the solar system, hurtling through the cosmos. That's what we want. All right. So that's the best possible timeline. So let's talk about the worst possible timeline.
So the worst possible timeline is Russia departs in 2024. They take their toys with them. And the rest of the world is left going, we don't have working components to keep a stable platform in space. In that case, I think there's going to be a whole lot of head scratching and scrambling. And right now we have two giant question marks. And when I say giant, I mean many-story high heavy lift question marks.
Right, Starship-sized question marks.
Yeah, so we have
SLS-sized question marks.
Right. So at the time of this recording, last night, they took the SLS out of the large vehicle assembly building. VAB. That's the set of letters. Last night they took the Artemis SLS out of the vehicle assembly building, the VAB. They drove it out to the launch pad. And part of our last episode of this season is going to be asking the question, did it launch? and we are at this point where Artemis is Schrodinger's rocket. Is it going to work? And even if it works, is Congress going to buy into what is the most expensive launch vehicle ever created?
Yes.
At the same time, we have Starship under development down at Boca Chica. They've started building launch facilities in Cape Canaveral as well. And the question becomes there, are they going to get the FAA and the environmental studies cleared to allow them to even try doing test launches?
And that doesn't seem too far away now. Like, I've heard mid-June those clearances should be had, and
yes,
then it's
but
really
are they
up
going to be a yes or a no? That's the question.
Sure, yes, but and at the same time, all this additional time Starship is needed because it wasn't ready.
No.
And who knows if it's going to be ready even after the FAA clears it for launch. But
they are
maybe
testing engines like crazy people right now.
Yeah, so maybe by the end, before we go into hiatus, we will be able to give you an answer on what happened with Starship and SLS. My gut says we won't for
I don't
either
think we'll
one.
Yeah. And so here we are without the knowledge of what kind of heavy lift capacity is the country going to have. We can't say what is possible for a new space station. Yeah. Yesterday, there was a release of basically the Starship Pez dispenser where they showed it just basically unloading satellite after satellite after satellite in the most insane kind of way. If we are able to essentially launch multi-story buildings all at once into space, our capacity to put things easily into low Earth orbit makes the idea of a new space station. Yeah, of course we're going to have a new space station.
But even if Starship flies, we are years from it being a dependable launch vehicle that's capable of launching modules designed to fit inside Starship, et cetera, et cetera. So it does not save you from a space station that is losing altitude without a way to boost itself back up.
No, this is true, but I think the boosting it back up problem is much more readily solvable. And if we know we will have a heavy lift vehicle, then we know we can build things that require a heavy lift vehicle. If we are stuck using the existing fleet of rockets that we have, it's a much slower go, and I'm so glad that Bigelow has been off in the background working on inflatables forever.
I think Bigelow went out of business.
Am I just like making shit up?
Yeah, let me see.
Did Bigelow switch names? Did they get bought by Axiom?
Bigelow Aerospace lays off its entire workforce 2 years ago.
Who's now doing the inflatables? Is that Axiom?
The Axiom is doing it, yeah.
Oh, good Lord. Okay, so...
Yeah, so Axiom is the one that is building the inflatable space station that's going to be attached to the space station. That's going to be the commercial module that then parts of the station will probably be detached with it, and that will serve as the new thing. So I guess what I'm hearing is the Russians will detach their station.
Hopefully not, but they could.
They probably won't be able to maintain it. And so it will crash. They'll have to crash it into the ocean.
Yes.
The U.S. won't have what they need, and they'll probably have to crash their portion into the ocean. And so in the worst possible timeline, in just a couple of years from now, we could see the space station be broken up and then all the parts crash into the ocean.
And Axiom, which is not Bigelow, despite being called Bigelow repeatedly throughout this podcast. I am so sorry, Axiom. They are in some ways our final hope. You are our final hope, Axiom, says the robot hologram.
Right. Well, you know what? We're gonna just have to wait and see what happens. My guess, this is just my guess, is that the Russians don't take the toys and go home. They stick with it. They continue to do their part, even despite the situation in Ukraine, and they're able to maintain their professionalism, and the whole station sort of stumbles through till about 2028, and then it it does come down.
So here I'm going to disagree with you. I agree they aren't going to take their toys and go home. I do think that we've been hearing the 2024 date from them long enough that 2024, they're going to start working with the Chinese space station. I really think they're just going to switch their allegiances. And I hate to use the word allegiance, but because China isn't allowed to be part of any collaborations with NASA per congressional rules, it really is a us or them kind of international situation.
And China has been inviting lots of other nations to participate in their space station and have signed up lots of partners. But it's not like they can detach the Russian modules and then link them up with the Chinese space station. It's a completely different orbit.
Correct.
So they would just be detaching their station and either trying to figure out a way to keep it going or crash it. And then they would have to launch modules that they've been building for the ISS. There's like one science module left, I think, and maybe launch that and dock that with the Chinese space station. So they're going to have to spin up essentially from scratch again. And my feeling is that they can't.
And I think
their capabilities have been going downhill year after year after year.
I think they're just going to basically walk out on the ISS in 2024, drop the keys out the window and say, good luck, folks, and then work on building new things with China. And and
I think my feeling is that they can't build new things at this point. They are that they are both sort of starved for equipment, starved for people, starved for money. Their capability as a spacefaring civilization has been on the decline for 20 years. And so I can't imagine, like, China is way beyond them at this point. So I can't imagine that they'll get to a place where they'll be able to bring a lot useful to the table. But we will see, I guess. We can mark this date and then see which of these timelines end up correct. Thank you, Pamela.
Go ahead.
I just said thank you, but go ahead and say the last thing you wanted to say.
I was going to say 2024 is right around the corner, and we will be here to report on whatever the heck happens when it happens.
Thank you, Pamela.
And thank you, Fraser. And thank you to all the amazing folks out there on Patreon that allow us to have editors that make us sound so much smarter on days like this when I rename Axiom Bigelow over and over. Thank you so much for being out there helping us with your donations through Patreon. This week, I would like to specifically thank Helge Bjørkhaug, Thomas Sepstrup, Mountain Goat, Jordan Young, Burry Gowen, Stephen Veit, Kevin Lyle, Jeanette Wink, Bora Andre Lavsvoll, Andrew Poelstra, Venkatesh Chary, Brian Cagle, David Truog, TheGiantNothing, Aurora Lipper, David, Gerhard Schwarzer, Will Hamilton, Buzz Parsec, Ronald McCoy, JF Rajout, Kakoy Serif, William Krause, Laura Kettleson, Robert Plasma, Jack Mudge, Les Howard, Joe Holstein, Gordon Dewis, Frank Trippin, Alexis, Adam, Anise Brown, Neuter Dude, Richard Drum, William Baker, Zero Chill, Wanderer M101, and Felix Goot. Thank you all so much. You make the science flow.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. And then they saved.
They sure did.
I can't believe my dogs.
I can.
I know. They were quiet all morning and asleep all around me.
But I think the key is that you don't notice. Like, I think, like, we used to find, like, when we used to record episodes in the forest, we were just stunned by how much noise there always was. And you realize, like, someone's flying an airplane overhead, someone is mowing their lawn, there's a big truck going by, there's a siren, there's whatever. And you just don't notice those sounds until it's important, and then suddenly there's all these noises, and this is our lives. We just don't realize how we're just drowning in noise. Even where we are now, it's definitely insanely quiet most of the time, but we definitely get every now and then, an airplane or a helicopter flying overhead. So it never goes away.
Do you get cicadas that far north?
Yep.
Yeah. They
but
are
not loud.
Yeah.
We get
cicadas
we get
are
crickets
so loud.
and frogs. Yeah, crickets and frogs are loud for us here.
Do you get owls?
Mm-hmm.
We have a neighborhood owl that makes noises that sounds like screaming monkeys. And the first time I heard it, it completely freaked me out. There's much
funny.
Recording and posting to the internet to say, what is this thing? Owl.
That's amazing.
Yes, owl.
Yeah, I one time had an owl set up in a tree just like right outside my bedroom.
Yeah.
And then it was just hoo-hooing all night long.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty loud. Yeah. But yeah, so my guess is that those dogs are barking all the time and you're just not noticing because you're just not paying attention to it because you're not worried about it. That would be my guess. And that it only seems like, coincidentally.
No, they were asleep all around me all morning because I was enjoying that they were asleep all around me all morning.
Yeah, definitely one of the advantages of a deaf dog. Although she does bark. She can definitely bark. Although it's a weird bark. We sort of describe it as saying "warp warp." The dog makes a warp warp noise. All right, let's take on some questions. So Arjun asks, does China only launch Chinese satellites, or do they do other countries like African countries or other Asian countries? That's a good question.
I'm trying to remember who launched the Saudi Arabian satellite that went up earlier this year.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Are you in the chat? If Kerbal's in the chat, he probably knows.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They launched a commercial satellite, 22 rockets. I don't see any other countries though. They must. I know, like someone's mentioning ISRO, like definitely ISRO launches other country satellites.
Yeah.
Because they did some American satellites. But I don't know. I can't see an example of them launching. Like just earlier this year, they launched 22 satellites, but it looks like they were all domestic satellites.
I will ask Eddie.
Yeah. Your dog?
No, I'm sorry. I will ask Kerbal is what I meant to say, who is also named Eric in real life. And somehow my brain combined Eddie, Kerbal, and Eric, and only the word Eddie came out of my mouth, which is my dog.
Carolyn B asks, if all the astronauts left, can they return at a later date to an empty ISS?
It requires so much maintenance.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I mean, we've all had that car at some point in our life that was a death trap, but it was the death trap we could afford. And if you leave it in the yard for 3 weeks, it's never going to run again.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ISS right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, as you say, like the maintenance is non-stop when the astronauts get to the station. And so to try and put it into some kind of low maintenance state has not been planned. It's been continuously inhabited for a reason. I think the plan for the Lunar Gateway will have the ability to have it be uninhabited for periods of time. So, there won't be people at the Lunar Gateway all the time. But that's not the plan for the ISS right now.
And Lunar Gateway will be new, and it's just like the Chinese space station isn't human crewed the entire time right now yet either.
Right.
With newer technology, it's a whole lot more forgiving than stuff that is on its last sad little aluminum support beam.
Arjun asks, could the station lose some modules and still function?
Yeah, the question is, how do you remove them? It's like I'm going to mispronounce it because I can only mispronounce it. The Naoka, the module they added in 2021 and used it to rotate by accident the International Space Station far more than anyone had ever planned or designed it to support. It's brand new in the grand scheme of things, and it could be removed. So
and I think the goal is to have the newer modules go with the commercial modules.
Right.
So they'll be part of the private space station.
The thing that I'm waiting to see, and it may be out there and I simply haven't been able to find it so far, is, are they going to move the solar panels, which they replaced a whole lot of parts within the past few years on those solar panels? Or are they going with entirely new solar panels? Because we are rapid fire innovating solar panel technology, and I don't know what's the better option. The technology is just changing that fast.
Yeah. And I mean, and NASA is one of the organizations that is really driving forward the development of lighter weight, higher spectrum solar panels. So it's a different story than even what it was 20 years ago.
Right.
So it is interesting. It's tough because, like, with these heavier launchers coming online with the more reusable possibilities, I mean, like if you did have a Bigelow 2200, which is the number of cubic meters of internal space, I think. It would be the same as the entire International Space Station, and it could be launched on a SLS.
Yeah.
So you could launch one inflatable habitat that would have enough room for, in one giant sort of ball that people would live in, and it can be done in one launch. So there are really interesting ideas for inflatable habitats, and matched with the new heavier launchers. Like, we just might be in this weird, uncomfortable phase where you go to the next step and now you're launching starships, and starships could put up things that are, again, another order of magnitude, right?
Yeah.
So you could have things that are 5,000 cubic meters of internal volume. Way bigger than the space station.
What I love is we're kind of in this middle point right now where, with the space shuttle, we treated it like a pickup truck, as it was designed to be, and it took up modules in their entirety. And so it was like prefab homes, except in orbit. We are now looking with Axiom/Bigelow, that is really Axiom now, to take
they're two different companies. They're not.
Well,
it's not like
the
one became the other.
Concept of inflatable.
Right.
Concept of inflatable. We're now looking to take up things that can back down super small. You blow them up in space and then build inside of them.
Yeah.
But then when we go to Starship, it's going to be back to the launching prefabs again. So
right. Or you do, again, inflatable, but they're even bigger. Yeah. And there's a lot better automation today than there was 20 years ago. And so you could imagine a space station assembling itself, where you're sending up modules. Yeah. So you're sending parts. It's 3D printing trusses. It's 3D printing perovskite solar panels onto the outside surfaces of itself. You've got, if you fundamentally look at the new kinds of technology that have been developed, you could have very different space stations. And then the question comes back to, do we do we need them? Like, you could build a starship that is a space laboratory.
Yes.
That has a tremendous amount of internal volume. And this thing flies to space, orbits the Earth for, say, a year.
Yeah.
And has all of these science experiments inside that they want to do. And then at the end of the year, the thing deorbits again. And then they upgrade all of the gear and the hardware and whatever. So it's such a weird time for us. And who knows kind of what the future is going to hold. But I think that we're in this really uncomfortable, the timing with the disruption from the Russians is really bad. The lack of US capability for being able to boost up the station is really bad.
Yeah.
The over-reliance on Russian rocket engines is really bad. It goes on and on and on. It's a rough time. And, we've got ISS, we've got SLS, but I mean, I think we all know SLS is too expensive.
It is
It's
the
not a
backup
truck.
rocket you use. It's sort of like, I know people that have really big old gas hog dually pickup trucks that only get used when they have to tow their big horse trailer somewhere.
Yeah.
And
this is how you put humans on the moon.
Yeah, I feel that SLS is that dually pickup truck that you don't use most days, and you certainly don't do a grocery run in.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it is only for launching the heaviest possible payloads, of which there aren't a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I mean, we're going to see like one launch a year. It's going to be in some cases 2 in a year, but mostly 1 a year, like, and sometimes even not one every year. Like, it's a very, I think that's a great example. You're just like giant double axle pickup truck that you just barely take, and you only put a few thousand kilometers on it. So yeah. Yep. So what's going on? What are you working on?
We are coming out of our wonderful week off last week with a whole lot of updates on CosmoQuesticon coming in October. We have most but not all of our guests of honor announced. Pulling up the list because I have slept since I looked at it and my brain erased things. So we are looking at our theme is Rockin' with Rockets and Robots, and following that theme we have David Joseph Wesley, who composed the theme song for Astronomy Cast. He's going to be our artist guest of honor and telling us his stories about working with sci-fi movies. Our author guest of honor is Alex White, and they have written some of the best robot including sci-fi, in my opinion. Our engineer guest of honor is Jean Wright. She worked on the quilting that was used on the space shuttle to replace some of the heavy ceramic tiles. John Galloway, Das, for those of you over on Twitch, is going to be our gamer guest of honor, and our rocketry guest of honor is Seth Lockman from Blue Shift. So that is our current lineup. Tickets are available. We are holding the event in October this year. And if you're thinking to yourself, isn't that when you normally do Hangout-a-thon? You are right. Unfortunately, we have to do repairs on my house, and we couldn't do CosmoQuesticon while construction is underway. So
you're going to use the hiatus to good use, to loud use. That's funny.
I'm taking a lesson from you and just hoping my timelines don't slip the same way. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But
I think we're about 3 months. We're about 3 months late so far.
Yeah. So we're also launching our Let Them Sleep fundraiser. And if we can raise our target $40,000 by the end of CosmoQuesticon in October, there will be no Hangout-a-thon this year, and we are simply going to take joyous pleasure in the fact that we have an amazing group of humans that support us enough that we can sleep, and there are no holiday launches or encounters this year so we can actually, for the first time, enjoy our holidays. Now, if we don't raise that money, we will be instead planning a hangout-a-thon. So, yeah, reach out. Let us sleep, please.
So we've been doing a lot of good stuff over on Universe Today. People have been wondering when I'll get back to doing the Guide to Space videos, and we did a version of the Guide to Space. So we did a sort of big background information about James Webb and what to expect when it's coming out in the next, when you see those first images and what the future might hold for it and so on. And so that was a sort of intense, just one topic video that we did. But yeah, we've been doing a lot of really great stuff and a lot of really fun interviews on the channel. So if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel recently, you should definitely check it out. All right, Pamela, thank you so much for hanging out and doing another episode of Astronomy Cast. And thanks to the dogs for adding some additional entertainment to the live stream. Thanks for everyone watching us, both on YouTube and on Twitch. Thanks to all the moderators helping out, all of the editors, producers, people behind the scenes. We could not do this show without you. All right, everybody, we will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.